Title: A Legacy Dismissed. We're bringing in younger talent with fresh perspectives. The words floated in the space between us, heavy and sharp, like a door quietly closing. I sat motionless, hands folded neatly on my lap, absorbing what Callum Hartley, our brand new CEO of just 2 weeks, had said. His office still smelled faintly of fresh varnish. The once warm cream walls had been painted a modern charcoal blue, a shade that felt cold and unfamiliar after my 20 years here. "I see," I answered, my voice steady and even. "And when will this transition take place?" Callum adjusted the cuff of his starched designer shirt and glanced at his smartwatch, a habit I'd picked up on during our few brief interactions. At just 36 years old, he had the polished look of someone who had only known success: sharp haircuts, sharp suits, sharp words. "Today will be your final day, Lydia," he said, sliding a folder across his sleek wooden desk. "HR has prepared your severance package. 2 months' salary. Standard non-disclosure agreement. The usual paperwork." I was 54 years old, the principal systems engineer who had built Medline Network's core infrastructure from scratch. When Sam Brooks and I had founded this company in his suburban Maryland garage, I personally hand-wrote the first server configurations. I had mapped every migration, secured every backup, designed the multi-layered redundancy systems that protected our customers' data through blackouts, cyber attacks, even natural disasters. I hadn't just built the foundation. I was the foundation. "Of course," I said simply, taking the folder. "Will there be a transition plan?" "Much of the architecture isn't fully documented yet, and without." "We've reviewed it," Callum interrupted with a curt wave of his hand. "The new team can figure it out. We're moving toward cloud-native architecture anyway. More flexible. More efficient." I gave a small nod, biting back a smile at his buzzword-filled confidence. If he'd read even a handful of my reports, he'd know we had already transitioned to a hybrid cloud system 2 years ago, carefully designed to ensure uptime during widespread outages. "I understand," I said. "Thank you for the opportunity to serve Medline for so many years." I rose from my seat, extending my hand firmly. "I wish you all the best." For a moment, Callum looked genuinely surprised. Perhaps he had expected tears, outrage, desperate negotiation. Instead, he received a firm handshake and a composed, professional smile. As I walked out of his office, I felt a swirl of emotions: grief for what I was leaving behind, fury at the cold dismissal after decades of loyalty, but strangely, also a sense of excitement. They had no idea what they didn't know. And the systems I had built were resilient, except to the ignorance of those who thought they were smarter than they were. I packed up my small corner desk carefully. 20 years of memories compressed into a single cardboard box, a few family photos, my Women Who Code coffee mug collection, and the bronze plaque Sam had given me on our 15th anniversary. To Lydia, the architect who turned dreams into blueprints. Sam had cashed out 5 years ago when private equity came in. He now lived comfortably in Colorado, sending the occasional postcard. He had called last week after hearing rumors about Callum's appointment. "Be careful, Lydia," he warned me. "This guy likes a clean sweep. Top to bottom." I had heard him. I just hadn't thought it would happen this quickly. Looking around the open-plan office one last time, I caught the eye of Jordan Wells, my lead systems analyst. He hurried over, his face pale. They're letting you go?" he asked in a hushed voice, shooting nervous glances toward the executive suite. "Lydia, that's crazy. You're Medline." I smiled gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Take care of what we built, Jordan," I said. "They're going to need someone who remembers what matters." And with that, I carried my box toward the elevators quietly, with dignity, knowing the real storm was yet to come. "Nobody knows the infrastructure like you do." I rested a hand lightly on Jordan's shoulder. "You'll figure it out," I said warmly. "Just remember what I always told you about the primary server cluster. Never update without running the diagnostic sequence first," he finished automatically, managing a half smile. "Exactly." He looked worried, and honestly, he had reason to be. The authentication protocols, the recovery layers, they're all documented, I added calmly. It wasn't entirely the truth. While some documentation existed, the deeper recovery protocols required a specific sequence of credentials, a multi-step verification process I had implemented years ago after an ex-employee had tried to corrupt our systems. Only I knew the full sequence. It had been a safeguard, never meant to lock anyone out, but to protect the company from short-sightedness or malice. "I'll be fine," Lydia, Jordan said, though doubt crept into his voice. "Change is part of growth," I said, handing him a sticky note with my personal email. "If you ever need anything, you know where to find me." I made my way through the office slowly, saying quiet goodbyes to coworkers, men's, and old friends. Some hugged me. Some simply looked at me with wide, stunned eyes. A few were openly furious on my behalf. I kept my posture straight and my smile steady. I would not give Callum or the executive team the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. As I approached the reception area, I stopped at Emily Harper's desk. Emily, the head of human resources, had been the one to schedule my unexpected performance review, a conversation that turned out to be nothing more than a scripted dismissal. "I processed your exit paperwork," she said quietly, her eyes flickering with guilt. "I'm sorry, Lydia. This wasn't my call." "I know." I offered her a gentle smile. "Just one question. Who's managing the server security protocols now?" She hesitated. "I think they're bringing in a team from Apex Technologies. Consultants." I tilted my head thoughtfully. "Why do you ask?" she added, frowning. I shifted the weight of the cardboard box in my arms. "Just curious," I said. "Change is good, right? That's what everyone keeps saying." With that, I pushed open the heavy glass doors of Meadowline Network for what might be the last time. The late afternoon sun hit me full in the face as I stepped out, my heart unexpectedly light. 20 years was a long time to invest in any one place. Maybe, just maybe, it was time for something new. The first week after my departure felt surreal. For years, my alarm had gone off at exactly 5:30 a.m., and by 7 o'clock, I was at my desk, troubleshooting and fine-tuning systems before most people even had their morning coffee. Now, the silence stretched out around me, thick and unfamiliar. I updated my resume, brushed up my LinkedIn profile, and spent long mornings reading through messages from old colleagues. Some were shocked, others sympathetic. A few even offered to refer me to roles at their companies. But I wasn't ready yet. Financially, I was secure. Living frugally had its benefits, and for once, I wanted to choose my next step deliberately, not reactively. On the 8th day, I received an email from Jordan. "Lydia, hope you're doing okay. Things here are chaotic. The Apex consultants are auditing everything. They're planning a complete system overhaul next month. They want to retire your backup protocols, calling them legacy." I tried to explain why they're critical, but I'm being pushed aside. "Miss your guidance, Jordan." I wrote back carefully, advising him to document his objections formally and keep detailed records. Quiet resistance was often more powerful than loud protests. I didn't mention that removing my backup systems without understanding them first would be like tearing out a building's foundation to install prettier windows. 2 days later, another message arrived. This one from Alicia Monroe, the project manager for Meadowline's biggest client, Red Oak Medical Systems. "Lydia, this is unofficial, but I wanted to give you a heads up." Alicia's email popped up late Saturday night, and I leaned in, reading carefully. "The Apex migration team is planning to update the main server cluster next week." I asked about the diagnostic sequence you always insisted on, but they said it's unnecessary overhead. Their new continuous deployment pipeline will handle everything automatically. "I have a bad feeling about this." "Stay well, Alicia." A knot twisted in my stomach. The diagnostic sequence wasn't just a belt and suspenders precaution. It was essential. Our main server cluster ran on specialized configurations, custom firmware, hardware-specific load balances that demanded exact pre-checks. Skipping those diagnostics was like skydiving without checking if your parachute was packed properly. For a moment, I debated emailing Callum or the CTO, warning them. But pride held me back. They had made their choice, dismissing 2 decades of knowledge without a second thought. They wanted a new era, without me. Let them have it. That night, I went into my home office and opened the bottom desk drawer, pulling out an encrypted hard drive. It contained every backup of my system documentation, including the full, detailed disaster recovery protocols. They weren't stored on any network. I had designed the access to require multi-factor authentication steps, ones only I had committed to memory. I stared at the drive for a long moment before locking it back into the drawer. They wanted fresh perspectives, I muttered to the empty room. They'll get them. 2 days later, on a quiet Sunday morning, I was sipping my coffee when my phone buzzed. A text from Jordan lit up the screen. Everything's down. Total system failure. No one knows what to do. The words sent a chill through me. I answered the call on the second ring. Jordan's voice was breathless. It happened at 3 a.m., he said. During the scheduled update window, the Apex team initiated their deployment, and everything crashed. Nothing's coming back up. The automated recovery sequences can't even initialize. I closed my eyes briefly. I'd set up a server monitoring alert years ago, and it had just pinged me too. Even away from Medline, old habits clung tightly. What about the backup protocols? I asked, already suspecting the answer. Jordan gave a short, bitter laugh. That's the thing, he said. The documentation needs a master authentication to unlock. None of us have it. It's like trying to open a bank vault without the code. Exactly as I'd designed it. After a data breach 7 years ago, I'd implemented an ultra-secure, layered system. You couldn't just brute force your way back online. Physical access, credential sequences, internal security keys, it required all of them. And none of it was in any database a consultant could casually browse through. Client impact? I asked, setting my mug aside. Jordan's voice dropped to a whisper. Catastrophic. Red Oak Medical's patient portal is completely offline. Norbridge Finance can't access their transaction servers. Even our internal systems are toast. Email, dev environments, payroll, everything's frozen. He paused. Callum's having a total meltdown. The board scheduled an emergency call for noon. For a moment, a pang of sympathy stirred in me for the colleagues still trapped inside the disaster. But that feeling was quickly swallowed by something stronger, validation. This was exactly the situation I had spent years trying to prevent. Exactly why I had insisted on thorough diagnostics, meticulous backups, and redundant protection. They hadn't listened. Now they would learn. Has anyone reached out to me officially? I asked. Not yet, Jordan said. But they will. No one else understands the recovery systems like you do. The Apex consultants are completely lost. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a new call. Emily Harper from HR. I should go, I told Jordan. Keep me updated. I switched lines. Hello, Emily, I answered calmly. Lydia, she began, her voice tight with stress. I hope you're doing well. I'm calling because, well, we have a situation at Medline. I've heard, I said neutrally. We need your help, she said, rushing the words. The server cluster is down. We can't access the recovery systems. The technical team believes you might be the only one who can resolve it. I let the silence stretch, just long enough for discomfort to settle in. Lydia, are you there? I'm here, I said smoothly. I'm just surprised to hear from Medline so soon. I was under the impression that my skills were obsolete, that fresh perspectives were the way forward. To her credit, Emily didn't offer hollow excuses. Things have changed very quickly. Would you be willing to help us? Of course, we would compensate you for your time. I see. And who authorized this request? Callum Hartley and the board chair, Eleanor Vance. I allowed myself a small, private smile. I'm not available to come in today, I said. However, I can assist remotely. I'll need to send over a consulting agreement first. My standard rate is $300 per hour, minimum engagement of 10 hours. I heard her sharp intake of breath, 3 times what Medline had paid me during full-time employment. I'll need to get approval for that, she said quickly. Of course, I replied gently. Take all the time you need. Meanwhile, I recommend activating the emergency containment protocols to limit further data loss. Jordan knows how to initiate them. I ended the call, opened my laptop, and began drafting a formal consulting contract, outlining my terms in unmistakable clarity. 20 minutes later, a new email notification popped up. It was from Eleanor Vance herself. Lydia, terms accepted. Contract attached with board signatures. Please assist immediately. Eleanor Vance, Board Chair, Medline Network. I signed the document, setting it aside with a quiet sense of satisfaction. Then I grabbed my emergency toolkit and laptop, ready to dive into the mess they had made without me. I didn't step foot into their office. Instead, I set up my home workstation, established a secure remote connection into Medline's battered systems, and began assessing the damage. It was even worse than Jordan had described. The failed deployment had triggered cascading data corruption across primary and backup servers. Critical infrastructure files were either missing, inaccessible, or damaged beyond simple repair. And the recovery systems were tightly locked behind the multi-step authentication barriers I had built years ago. My phone rang constantly, the CTO, project leads, even the infrastructure managers, all desperate, all needing immediate answers. I responded to each with a polite but firm message. I was working under official contract terms and would communicate only through secured, documented channels. At 2 p.m., my doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw a familiar figure. Callum Hartley himself stood on my porch, looking nothing like the confident CEO who had fired me 2 weeks ago. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, his face drawn and pale. Lydia, he said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Thank you for agreeing to help us. I thought it might be more efficient if we talked in person. We've never actually worked together in person, Callum said awkwardly, shifting on my doorstep. I regarded him for a long moment, then stepped aside. You could have called first, I said. I tried. You didn't answer. I was a little busy trying to save your company. I led him to my home office, where 3 monitors displayed the grim diagnostics of Medline's crippled infrastructure. To his credit, Callum's face paled as he scanned the screens, clearly grasping the severity of the situation. How long until we're operational again? He asked, voice strained. The recovery process has multiple stages, I explained, keeping my tone professional. Each one requires precise authentication steps and verification. If everything goes perfectly, we might have basic systems restored by tomorrow morning, full recovery in about 48 hours. 48 hours? Callum echoed, his face tightening. That's unacceptable. Clients should have been informed immediately, given realistic timelines. I finished the sentence for him. Yes, they should have. But this isn't a simple reboot, Callum. Your team attempted a complete system overhaul without running the diagnostic sequence I built for a reason. They bypassed critical safety protocols designed to prevent exactly this kind of disaster. He muttered under his breath, your protocols. A faint accusation in his tone. Yes, I said firmly. My protocols. The ones I developed, tested, and refined over nearly 2 decades to protect Medline Network's backbone. The ones that were dismissed as legacy systems by consultants who didn't understand them and who have barely been here a month. A flash of anger crossed his face, quickly replaced by weary resignation. What do you need from me to expedite this? He asked. Nothing, I said, turning back to my screens. I've already initiated the first phase of recovery. I tapped the monitor, displaying the live data rebuild. But there's something you should know. His shoulders stiffened. The board reached out to me separately, I said, watching his reaction carefully. What do you mean? Eleanor Vance called while you were on your way here, I said smoothly. The board is concerned. They've asked me to provide a full assessment of the infrastructure decisions made since my departure. It wasn't the full truth. Eleanor had only texted asking for updates, but I didn't feel the need to clarify. Callum's expression hardened instantly. I see. I'm not interested in office politics, I continued. I'm here to restore the systems and protect the data for our clients. That's all that matters to me. He glanced at the screens, the panic in his eyes dimming slightly into something closer to regret. Our clients, he repeated under his breath. You still think of them as yours. 18 years creates strong bonds, I said quietly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to continue the recovery. I'll expect hourly updates, he said stiffly. You and the board will receive them, I replied, not looking up. Callum let himself out, the front door closing with a soft thud behind him. I refocused on the work, methodically clearing corrupted databases, rebuilding secure access points, reinitializing core services. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. Bryce just announced all Apex consultants have been placed on administrative leave pending review. What did you say to him? I smiled but didn't reply. There would be time for explanations later. Right now, I had a company to save, whether they deserved it or not. By midnight, I had restored critical authentication systems and initiated full client portal recovery. My eyes burned from fatigue, but a deep, familiar satisfaction settled in. Problem-solving under pressure, it was what I had always excelled at, turning chaos back into order. At 2 a.m., just as I finalized the client portal recovery, my phone rang. It was Eleanor Vance. Lydia, I cannot thank you enough for stepping in, she said without preamble. The board has been monitoring your updates. Your progress is extraordinary. Thank you, Eleanor, I said evenly. The critical systems will be operational by morning. Full data validation will take another day. There was a pause before Eleanor continued. Lydia, I've been personally reviewing the decisions made over the past few weeks, she said carefully. The board was not fully informed about the extent of the changes being implemented, particularly regarding the core infrastructure you designed. I kept my voice neutral. I'm focusing on the recovery right now, Eleanor. We can address management decisions after the crisis is resolved. Of course, she agreed immediately. But I want you to know the board recognizes the value of your expertise. We'd like to discuss a more permanent arrangement once the situation is stabilized. After ending the call, I sat back for a rare moment of reflection. In just 3 weeks, Medline had gone from declaring me outdated to desperately clinging to my expertise. It was gratifying validation not just of my skills, but of the importance of institutional knowledge they had so casually dismissed. But it was also a hard reminder of how short-sighted the tech industry had become, always chasing trends, discarding experience like last year's software update. The next morning, I arrived at Medline Network's main offices just after dawn. The building buzzed with a tense, uncertain energy. Employees huddled in small groups, whispering nervously. The executive suite, once bustling, was conspicuously empty. Jordan met me at the entrance, his face lighting up with visible relief. You're a miracle worker, he said, falling into step beside me. Not a miracle, I corrected gently. Just solid system design and proper recovery protocols. In the main conference room, I found a group waiting, the executive team, several board members, and Callum Hartley sitting stiffly at the far end of the long table. His face was a mask, giving nothing away. Eleanor rose and greeted me warmly. Lydia, thank you for coming in. We've been reviewing the preliminary damage assessment. I nodded, connected my laptop to the conference display, and pulled up a detailed report. As you can see, I began, the cascade failure was triggered by an unauthorized update that bypassed critical diagnostic protocols. Had the established procedures been followed, the system would have flagged the compatibility issues before they caused widespread corruption. For the next hour, I walked them through the technical breakdown, translating complex failures into simple cause-and-effect relationships they could grasp. I concluded with a series of immediate action steps and future safeguards. When I finished, Eleanor spoke first. "What would it take to bring you back, Lydia?" she asked. "Not just as a consultant. We're thinking director of infrastructure security, with full authority to rebuild and modernize systems as you see fit." Before I could answer, Callum cut in sharply. "With all due respect, we need to consider the modernization roadmap. Lydia's experience is valuable, but clinging to outdated systems cost us millions and damaged key client relationships." Eleanor turned to him, her voice cool and commanding. "The strategy needs reassessment, Callum." The tension in the room thickened. I closed my laptop slowly, choosing my next words with care. This was a rare moment, leverage I hadn't sought, but now fully held. "I'm not interested in returning as an employee," I said calmly, "but I'm willing to negotiate an ongoing consulting arrangement on my terms." Every eye in the room shifted to me, waiting. For the first time in my long career, I wasn't the one asking for a seat at the table. I owned it. 3 days after the system crash, I sat across from Eleanor Vance and Medoline's lead counsel, finalizing the terms of my new consulting agreement. The document before me represented more than just professional survival, it symbolized my vindication. The document before me represented not just a professional victory, but a personal vindication. To summarize, the board attorney said, "Reviewing the key points, Meadowline Network will retain your services as principal infrastructure consultant for a minimum of 6 months at your stated rate of $300 per hour. You'll maintain independent status," Eleanor added, "while overseeing the reconstruction of our security architecture and training key internal staff." And as discussed, she continued, "The board has approved formal acknowledgement of your original system architecture, full attribution in all technical documentation, and all client-facing materials." I nodded slowly, scanning the final page of the agreement to make sure every word was in place. "And the letter?" I asked. Eleanor slid an envelope across the polished table. "Drafted and signed," she confirmed. Inside was the formal apology I had requested, a written acknowledgement of my contributions to Meadowline Network, and an expression of regret over how my departure had been handled. It wasn't a legal document. It didn't affect my consulting terms, but it mattered. Deeply. "Then we have an agreement," I said, picking up the pen and signing the final page with a steady hand. "I'll begin the comprehensive security audit tomorrow morning." As we wrapped up the meeting, Eleanor personally walked me to the elevator. "Between us," she said quietly, "Callum has been placed on administrative leave pending further review." His decision to bypass established protocols without understanding the consequences was enlightening for the board. I kept my expression neutral. "Companies often mistake innovation for abandoning core principles," I said as the elevator doors slid open. "The best technology builds on proven foundations. It doesn't bulldoze them." Eleanor studied me with a look I hadn't seen before, one of genuine respect. "You know, Lydia," she said, "in all the years you worked here, I don't think leadership ever truly understood your value." "That's the nature of infrastructure," I replied with a small smile. "Nobody notices it until it fails." When I stepped out of the building, it wasn't as a discarded employee. I was leaving as a valued consultant, commanding the compensation and respect that had always matched my true worth. Over the next several weeks, I worked closely with Jordan and a small, dedicated team to rebuild Meadowline's battered systems. This time, I documented everything meticulously, creating clear, detailed manuals that not only explained how the systems worked, but why they were designed that way. Meanwhile, the Apex consultants were quietly shown the door. The board's investigation revealed they had grossly misrepresented their experience with legacy system integration. Their reckless modernization proposals would have stripped away the very foundations that had made Meadowline reliable for nearly 20 years. One afternoon, about a month after the crash, Alicia invited me to lunch at a cozy little cafe near the office. "The clients are calling you the server whisperer," she said with a grin. "Meridian Healthcare specifically requested you personally oversee their next system upgrade." I chuckled, stirring my tea. Ironic, I mused. A month ago, I was supposedly obsolete. Experience never really goes out of style, Alicia said, lifting her cup in a small salute. Companies just forget sometimes, until reality reminds them. When I returned to the office, I found Jordan in the training room, working with a new face I didn't recognize. Lydia, he said, waving me over. Meet Jason, he's joining the infrastructure security team. Jason looked fresh out of college, with bright eyes and that eager energy that comes from having more theoretical knowledge than real-world experience. It's an honor to meet you, Miss Hartwell, he said, extending his hand. Your work on the distributed authentication system is brilliant. I shook his hand, hiding a small smile at being addressed as Miss Hartwell, a first in my long career. Thank you, Jason, I said warmly. And please call me Lydia. As we walked toward the server room, something inside me shifted, something profound. It wasn't just my professional standing that had changed. It was my own perception of my worth. I hadn't needed to fight for recognition. I hadn't needed to shout, demand, or beg. I simply had to let reality reveal the truth. My presence now commanded the respect I had always deserved, not because I demanded it, but because it was undeniable. The very systems I had built, once dismissed as outdated, had proven themselves stronger, smarter, and more essential than anyone had realized. They hadn't failed Medline. Poor leadership had failed Medline. Watching Jason and Jordan collaborate as they implemented one of my original security protocols, I felt a satisfaction that ran deeper than pride. It was legacy. I had built something that would endure, something that mattered. And now, finally, everyone knew it. I would keep sharing my knowledge, but on my own terms, with proper recognition and fair compensation. The next generation deserved to learn that real innovation doesn't mean discarding the past. It means respecting it, understanding it, and building thoughtfully upon it. In the end, I hadn't needed revenge. I hadn't needed to bring the company to its knees. All I had needed was time and the confidence that reality would do the vindication for me. Expertise earned through decades of hard work always shines brightest when the storm comes. And now, everyone at Medline Network knew it too. The greatest revenge wasn't watching them fail. It was watching them finally understand exactly what and who they had thrown away. If my story resonated with you, I hope you'll take a moment to show your support. Leave a comment below. Tell me what part of my journey stood out the most to you. Have you ever faced a situation where your experience was overlooked or undervalued? I'd love to hear your story. Your words matter. Sharing them helps remind others that they are not alone. For years, I thought I had to prove myself over and over just to be seen. I thought that maybe, if I worked harder, stayed longer, said less, I'd finally earn the respect I deserved. But what I've learned is that sometimes the world only recognizes your value when reality forces it to, and that's not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their blindness. If you're in a place right now where your contributions are being dismissed, where your voice is being overlooked, I want you to remember this. Your value is not determined by who acknowledges it. Your value is inherent. Hold your ground. Keep building. Keep standing tall in your expertise. Reality has a way of revealing the truth in the end, and when it does, it's your legacy, your integrity, and your quiet perseverance that will shine the brightest. I invite you to stand with me. Support those around you who are quietly doing the hard work. Speak up for experience when you see it being pushed aside. And most importantly, never let anyone convince you that you have outlived your usefulness. In the right moment, your knowledge could be the very thing that saves everything. Thank you for being here and for believing that experience still matters.